Hi, friends. This is your pal, Scott Garibay, and today we're going to do Dungeons and Dragons to Saquon Barkley Part 2. So this is a two-part video. To get the full context, you need to watch Part 1. Just scroll back in my feed, you'll see it. All right, okay. I have been watching. So I have been getting an invitation. I have seen every single home game with this gentleman from my church who was inviting me over and continued to invite me over. Free snacks, 65-inch, really nice basement. He's all in, and this is his thing. He watches, actually, this is just one of his things. He watches the Philadelphia Eagles every time they play at home. He sits his butt on his couch. He watches them, and he's been doing this for years. And this year, for the whole season, he included me, right? And I feel incredibly blessed. Now, I need to stress this. I do not care about football. Right? But what I do, I want to express this to you because I realize this because of Dungeons and Dragons. Auxiliary interest. I have a great time going over and watching the Philadelphia Eagles play with this gentleman. And so why? If I don't care about football, why would I spend 3.5 hours watching football? One, this gentleman has identified that he wants to be a friend of mine. He wants to spend time doing something together. If you spend 3.5 hours doing something with somebody, it's a good chance you're going to end up friends, right? And actually, I was 100% right. During this season, we have grown to be genuine friends, right? If this guy called me up at midnight and said, I'm in the park, bring a shovel, I would show up, okay? That's my definition of friendship, by the way, okay? All right. Or you like, hey, I need to get dropped off at the airport. Or I need to help. I need help moving, right? I gotta be your friend to do any of those. I ain't gonna do none of that if I ain't your friend, right? So that's a thing. All right. So one, the friendship. I don't take that for granted. I don't take people asking to be friends lightly. And just to be clear, nobody asks to be your friend. They say, hey, can I spend 3.5 hours doing anything with you? That's a request to be friends, right? So one, and then during the commercials, I asked this guy about himself. This is a pattern, a Scott Gary pattern. I do it all the time, right? And I know everything about this guy. I know his entire life history, right? And he's a fascinating dude. And I'm incredibly blessed to have this view into his life, right? And that's helpful to me because I learn, what to do and what not to do, because I look and say, okay, well, you did all these things and then you landed here, right? And he has used his time well, right? So very good guy, right? And so I'm really enjoying it. So I have seen every single Philadelphia Eagles game this year, and I feel so guilty because for years people have been watching the Eagles and they're trash. This year, I have not seen them lose once. They've been on a tear. Now, why have they been on a tear? Because of Saquon Barkley, right? Now, first of all, let's talk about Saquon Barkley in context of Dungeons & Dragons. So Saquon Barkley is one of the best athletes on the planet. Doesn't matter what sport. So I knew this when I was watching the game. So what they do is Jalen Hurts is our quarterback, and Jalen will hand the ball to Saquon Barkley rather than throw it. And Saquon Barkley will then rush forward, right? And there will be a 1.5 foot gap, and he will find it, right? And those defensemen will do their job, and they'll make a gap for him. And that gap and this is why I think Saquon Barkley is so powerful and and is one of the best athletes that's ever been born on the planet Earth, right? I'm telling you, I think this guy is world-class history class, right? He is phenomenal, right? And so I think any other running back, you need to open up a 2, a 3, a 4 foot gap. You open up 18 inches, and Saquon Barkley will go through that gap, and he will rush for 5 to 50 yards, right? And I'm not saying this. He is literally, and this is why we're talking today, he's 100 yards away from having the most rushing yards in any season ever in the NFL, okay? All right, so Saquon Barkley does his thing, right? And gets in position to dominate the sport, right? And he has 2,000 rushing yards, right? And every week I have seen him just plow through plow through defenders like they're tissue paper. And he just gets the ball and he moves like lightning, right? He's so fast. But I knew he was world class when one day he was going for advancing downfield, right? And he'll do a juke. You've seen a juke, right? Like you turn to your right, but then super fast you turn to your left. You fool the guy and you spin around, right? This guy, so he does 2 or 3 jukes, right? He keeps going and he needs to continue forward. A defender leaps to tackle him. He moves to tackle him, not leaps, moves, right? Like kind of lowers their body and kind of targets down and rushes toward him, right? And he hurdled this guy backwards. He jumped in the air and spread his legs and hurdled the defender backwards, right? And then landed on his feet and kept running. It was like play of the week, where you probably saw it if you're on my channel, you didn't see it. And it was incredible. I couldn't believe it. Now, first of all, let's stop right there and talk about Dungeons and Dragons. So first of all, we don't have a Saquon Barkley in the Dungeon Master slot or the Dragon Master slot, right? And I don't think people understand this. First of all, Matthew Mercer is the best Dungeon Master in the world. And he did that without even focusing or trying. I'm not kidding, right? Like, you're like, wait a second, what do you mean, Scott? Well, first of all, that ain't even his main gig. What has Matthew Mercer worked hardest on in his life? Voice acting. He's actually a voice actor. It's not even his day, like he's a professional dungeon master. It ain't even his day job. He doesn't even work that hard on it. He doesn't even care that much about it, right? It's literally second tier nonsense to him, right? So the best guy in the world at Dungeon Master doesn't even care about Dungeon Master, right? Like it's not even his main jam. It's not even what he's most passionate about, right? Like, so, and then also, I don't know if you know this. This is super weird. I could not believe this. Did you know Matthew Mercer can draw, and not like good, like real good, right? Like he can draw phenomenally well. And actually, the reason I'm telling you this is to just tell you, Matthew Mercer don't care about Dungeon Master. He does a whole bunch of other things, spends hours and hours and hours and hours on other things, right? He's also happily married to Marissa Ray, right? Gary Gygax sacrificed his marriage for the sake of Dungeons and Dragons. Like I'm telling you, the best Dungeon Master in the world doesn't even care about Dungeon Master. We have never seen the Saquon Barkley of Dungeon Master. And that makes me excited, right? Like, we've never seen a girl or a gal who can jump over, a player character and hurdle them backwards and then keep sprinting, right? And I think it's important to understand this because we have higher roads to go. We haven't even seen Tier 1 D&D yet. You haven't even seen Tier 1 D&D yet. 50 years in, Dungeons & Dragons is crushing every OSR and every indie competitor it has. They're not even close. And you ain't even seen anywhere near what Dungeons & Dragons can actually do. Because there is no Saquon Barkley of Dungeon Mastering, and there certainly is no Saquon Barkley of Dragon Mastering. Right? And so that's something that we get to look forward to, which I am extremely excited about. I'm excited that we get to look forward to a Saquon Barkley of Dungeon Mastering or a Saquon Barkley of Dragon Master. Someone who is outrageously, and let's talk about Saquon Barkley, right? Here's why we're talking about him. We're talking about Saquon Barkley because he is not only phenomenally naturally gifted, he is naturally gifted. He was born to play in the NFL. It was like he was destined to it, right? But on top of that, there's not only just a tremendous amount of natural talent. There's almost equal. I don't think it's quite equal. I do think more of it is natural talent than grit. But this guy has worked. He has taken a platform of natural talent, right? And then on top of that, put in blood, literally blood, sweat, and tears. He has grit. He has driven himself harder, worked smarter. He actually hard. Yeah. I think there's a lot of smart work in there too. He has protected his body, protected his mind, and built a platform to do nothing but run a football, right? And he's super successful at it. And I don't think we have anything like him in Denver. We've never seen the Saquon Barkley of Dungeon Master. We haven't even seen a great Dungeon Master. I think the best Dungeon Master in the world is a good Dungeon Master, not a great one, right? We haven't even seen a great Dungeon Master yet. And we certainly haven't seen it on the Dragon Master side, okay? All right, let's keep moving. So put that on a shelf with Saquon Barkley. Then we got this weird situation where Saquon Barkley, all right, gets into and I love that I can talk to you about this because this is deep cut. This is deep cut football talk. Listen to Scott Garibay doing deep cut football talk. Amazing, right? And the reason why is because of auxiliary interest. And I'm putting this on a shelf for you because I think you guys need to understand. We have a ton of people who do not give two rats about Dungeons and Dragons, but are playing Dungeons and Dragons because of auxiliary interest. Okay, and then they end up in a space where they either genuinely love it, or they know it and they understand it, even though they don't really care about it. That's where I am, right? I don't care about the NFL. I don't care about football, right? But I have a great time watching the Eagles play every week. I really do because of auxiliary interest, right? So here we go. All right, let's get all the way there, okay? All right. The other thing is, I cannot stress to you how powerful auxiliary interest is. So one of the things that I was really shocked and delighted by is I went to watch football one day, and this guy, he has another hobby, which is feeding the deer around his house. And so he's like, watch this, right? So when I leave, he walks out and he throws these apples and these pears to these deer, and 4 deer just came out and ate the fruit. And we got to see them from like 10 feet away. It was astounding. It was like a Bambi moment. There was literally a little creature that came out, and it was incredible. And I never thought, like that I would get to see deer eat fruit 10 feet away from me. It was a magical moment, right? Because of the NFL, right? And so I highly recommend you consider auxiliary interest. And also, as a dungeon master, I'm guaranteeing you there's at least one person at your table that's there who does not care about Dungeons and Dragons. They're never going to say it to you, right? But their auxiliary interest, they're there for auxiliary interest. Okay. All right. So Saquon Barkley, right? He gets to the point where he has 2. So we're like one regular season game away from going into the playoffs. And I think that Eagles might go all the way this year, right? Listen to me talk. I'm so amazing. I'm so amazed that I have this much information about NFL in my head, right? Because truly, I do not like sports, right? But I really but this auxiliary interest thing, I'm fascinated by it, right? Because you can genuinely enjoy something you really don't care about, which is really interesting. And I don't think we've really explored this space much as humans. I don't think we understand it, right? But this year, I'm endeavoring to understand it because I've benefited from it. Saquon Barkley has 2,000 rushing yards. The number 1 player in the world, right, in all of history had 2,100, right? So Saquon Barkley got very close to the point where he was about to, he got to the point where people were like, oh my gosh, he's going to break the record. He's going to be the number 1 running back in the history of the NFL, right? And so I was like, whoa, that's really exciting, right? And so I saw the Philadelphia Eagles go against the Dallas Cowboys. So the Philadelphia Eagles get up, right? And they're up 41-7 against the Cowboys. And they are just running game on them. They are just embarrassing them, right? And Saquon Barkley is just grabbing the ball and stealing 10, 20, 30 yards on scrubs, right? Just like, it's like he's playing high school players, right? By the way, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Dallas Cowboys are absolute garbage this year, right? I don't think I have a decent player on the whole team, right? And so Saquon Barkley was just running game on him, right? And it got to the point where I was like, that looks a little unsportsmanlike, right? Now, and the reason why was he's going for this record. So he's like, oh, these guys play worse than a high school team. I could just get 100, 200, 300 yards in this game, right? And it became, and here's why we're going to talk. When is the thing the thing? What are you doing? If you're a professional NFL player, what are you doing when you start playing? When you put on your helmet and you get in and you put on your pads, what are you doing? Are you playing to win the Super Bowl and bring home the Super Bowl title for your hometown? Or are you going in there to clown on fools and get this? You think I'm exaggerating? I'm not exaggerating. They ejected 3 players from this game because the Cowboys were so angry that Saquon Barkley was clowning them that it made them physically angry, and there was physical fights breaking out on the field. Right? He was clowning on them. Right? And so the question was, hey, we're all here, right? But what is this for? What if the NFL for? Right? Is it for setting records and making rock stars? Or is it for playing a season and then thinking, oh, I can run game on the Dallas Cowboys all year, right? I can get hundreds of yards off of them because nobody on their team would even play well on a high school team because they suck, right? But is that the point? Is that why we're here, right? And get this, the coach then said, it was so bad that the Philadelphia Eagles coach said, we're not going to do this again. Right? I need Saquon Barkley for the playoffs, and I need him for the Super Bowl. Actually, the coach said, I need him for the Super Bowl. The coach, already assumed that they would, win the playoff. And he said, I need him for the playoff, for the Super Bowl. And this ain't about Saquon Barkley winning this special, reward. This is about good football and us being not jerks to other players. And they're sitting him in the next game because there's no need to run him, right? In the next game, there's no need to run Saquon Barkley, which is incredible, right? So they're going to let him rest, and that way he's good to go for the Super Bowl, right? And there's no need to risk him because if they win or lose, it doesn't matter. They go into the playoffs, right? But if they play him, they're running for the record. But literally he could fall and, break his ankle or whatever, and then the Super Bowl shot, because they ain't going to win the Super Bowl without Saquon Barkley. But with them, it's almost a lock, right? In my humble opinion. Right? Okay. All right. So what does that mean for Dungeons & Dragons? What are we playing Dungeons & Dragons for? What are we playing Dungeons & Dragons for? You think it's for fun. Wrong. It's to improve as human beings. Dungeons & Dragons is a human improvement engine, right? Gary Gygax never meant anybody to roll some dice and have some fun with some stupid goblin shop characters. He meant it as an analog to understand wisdom, understand knowledge, understand emotion, and to move ourselves forward as human beings, and to take risks at the table that we couldn't take in real life. Dungeons & Dragons is about growth, improvement, transformation of individual humans at the table. It is not about fun, right? And Saquon Barkley said, this ain't about me setting a record. This is about me taking this entire team to the Super Bowl and bringing back that Super Bowl win for every Philadelphia. It ain't about me clowning on the Dallas Cowboys. It ain't about fun. Yes, it's fun to treat the Dallas Cowboys like clowns, right? Of course, to run game on them. Super fun. That's not what it's about. It's about improving as human beings. And Saquon Barkley is improving as a human being and saying, I might not make it this year, right? The Super Bowl is worth more than that record, right? Your improvement as a human being, your growth as a human being, your transformation as a human being is worth more than the fun you will get from chopping a goblin in half and learning nothing from your Dungeons & Dragons. Be the Saquon Barkley of Dungeons & Dragons. Be the bigger man. Be the better man. Be a better human being. Abandon fun and do it for the right reason. Dungeons & Dragons should be played. Dungeons & Dragons should be participated in by Dungeon Masters and Dragon Masters to improve themselves as human beings. For human improvement, human growth, human transformation. Fun sucks and losers pursue it. Dungeons & Dragons is not for fun. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion on fun and Saquon Barkley. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.